of having those tendencies so that they can manage them better to their advantage. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for hopping on.
You kind of started, but I would just like to briefly introduce you to everybody who is on the call, maybe folks who haven't been listening in for the past few minutes. So I'm very excited to welcome Jodi Flynn with us today. She is the founder of Women Taking the Lead, and she is an executive leadership coach, podcaster, author, speaker, workshop facilitator, and community leader for overachieving women, who I bet a lot of us on the call fit that description. She focuses on women who want to be successful without sacrificing any health or happiness. She works with women who are just absolutely rock star performers in work, but are running into the all too familiar risk of burnout. She's also the host of the critically acclaimed Women Taking the Lead podcast and is an Amazon best-selling author with her book, Accomplished: How to Go From Dreaming to Doing, which I'm very excited to say is going to be a door prize at the Miss JD conference next week. So if you're there, you may be able to get your hands on that. And Jodi also serves as vice president on the board for the Maine Women's Conference. Her website is womentakingthelead.com if you want to check her out more after this, or follow up and shoot her an email and say hi and ask her any questions. So without further ado, Jodi, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Katie. I appreciate that, and I appreciate everyone who made it here live, and for those of you who later, we're now living in the future, are watching the recording. So, you know, with the topic, finding your voice and taking charge of your career, I'm going to assume a couple of things. Although, Gail, you did tell us you were here for slightly different reasons, I'm going to assume for the rest of you, if you showed up to this webinar, you're watching it in the future, it's because you are looking to speak up more, to find your voice, and really take charge of your career. So the goal of this webinar is to have each of you walking away feeling like you can speak up and ask for what you need and want. And I'm going to cover 3 stumbling blocks that might be holding you back from speaking up. I'm going to share a few client stories and examples from my own life, and I'm going to help you begin the work of removing these stumbling blocks if any of them resonate with you and you can see that it's going on in your life. And I'm going to check in after each one that I talk about to see if you have any questions. And you're also going to get some homework assignments so that you can continue to apply what you gain today continuously in your career. It's great to get insights. It's awesome to have aha moments. They feel really good to us. But, you know, if we're not applying them to our lives, then they were just really like feel-goods and they didn't have an impact. So one thing I've realized through my own experience and working with my clients, and this has been reinforced through publications related to career development and achievement, is if you want to achieve your goals more quickly and easily, you have to be willing to declare what your goals are and what you will need to achieve them. You have to make it known. And in the coaching system I've developed for my clients, they get clear on the goals they have for themselves, they really own them, and then their next assignment is to start talking to as many people as possible about those goals. And I can't tell you how many of my clients have been surprised at how quickly things start moving once they've started like planting the seeds, we call it. You plant the seeds in others so when an opportunity arises, that person thinks of you. And it sounds simple, right? But there are some common beliefs my clients have, and you may have them as well, that will get in the way of the ability to have those conversations. They are the same beliefs that will keep you from speaking up in a meeting or asking for support when you need it. And I'm going to share these stumbling blocks with you and some alternative perspectives in the hopes that this will also help you feel more at ease talking about yourself and asking for support. When you start speaking up about your career goals, you'll need to lay the foundation of what you've already accomplished along with your strengths. You need to make a case for why you are capable of taking on more or changing direction. And what gets in many women's way in this area is the first stumbling block I want to share. This is what the thought sounds like. If I speak up about myself and my accomplishments, I'm going to be bragging, or I'm going to be perceived as bragging. If this rings true for you, I want you to type yes in the comment box. Like if that resonates, if you know that that's a thought that you have, let us know. So early in my career, about 6 months after leaving a job, I was told by my former manager that she didn't know how much I was doing until I was gone. Suddenly, a lot of things weren't getting done, and that's when it clicked for her that I had been doing these tasks. I didn't hide the fact that I was doing these particular tasks, but I did them quietly and without fanfare, all the while assuming she knew how hard I was working, and she did not. You know, how many of us say to ourselves, well, they know how hard I'm working. I'm putting in the time. They have to see, right? But people are busy, and they're caught up in their own stuff, and they're not always aware of exactly what we're doing and how much we're doing. So I'm seeing people are chatting. Yes, very true for me. Awesome. So people are relating to this. Now, here's the thing. After that conversation, part of me was gratified that I finally got the appreciation I deserved, but I was mostly frustrated with the situation and myself that I didn't make it more obvious to her how much I was contributing to our success. And it impacted our relationship in the job as well, because I felt very underappreciated in the job, and it was one of the reasons why I left. I wasted so much time in my career assuming the relevant people knew how hard I was working and what I was capable of. One time I was not considered for a project that I was interested in only because I wasn't thought of. The decision makers didn't know I was interested in being on this project because I didn't mention it to my boss or the project managers, and so I got overlooked. Not because they didn't think I was capable, they just didn't know I was even interested. So to be considered for new opportunities internally or externally, key players need to know you are both capable and interested. And one of my current clients, she reached out to me over the summer because when we had originally met a few years ago, she works in the aerospace engineering and manufacturing industry. She was young, a woman in a primarily male-dominated industry, and she had just been promoted a couple of times in the past couple of years. And when we spoke, she was really easygoing. She was really enjoying her job, felt appreciated, like things were really good. Now, fast forward a few years later, she's reaching out to me, and her current job had lost its luster. The culture changed. She didn't feel as appreciated or gratified, and she was looking for a new job. However, what her problem was, or her stated problem was, she labeled herself a tremendous introvert, and she was sick with the thought of having to network for a new job opportunity. And as most of us know, networking is typically the way we find our next job. And ironically, she hired me to get motivated to do the hard work of networking, but ultimately what we accomplished in our work together allowed her to get over the notion that it had to be hard, right? Once we got to that tipping point of, it's okay to talk to people about what you've done and tell them that you're interested and putting out feelers and that sort of thing, she started calling colleagues at other companies to let them know that she was looking at new job opportunities, and within 2 months, she was starting her new position, right? It happened that quickly, but it took picking up the phone and letting her goal be known. So I have some assignments for you if this is resonating with you, to help you get over the notion that you're bragging when you're talking about yourself, you're talking about what you're doing and what you're up to, and your goals. So the first one is list out your accomplishments and your strengths and really own them. Know that your being really great at something doesn't take away from anyone else, right? So I can honestly say, when I'm public speaking, I'm pretty good. I'm really good at that. I can hold a room. I can have real conversations with people. I make people feel at ease and, involved. But by my saying that, I'm not saying other people can't be good at it as well. But I'm owning the fact that I'm good at that. So if you struggle with coming up with what your strengths are, what you're really good at, what your accomplishments have been, I want you to ask a few people in your life who you trust and respect what you're really good at and what they see as some of your greatest accomplishments. Secondly, practice talking about yourself matter-of-factly, like you would about someone else. And it might feel uncomfortable at first, but start with talking about yourself like in the third person. So, I might say, Jodi's really good at public speaking. She can hold a room. She makes people feel calm and appreciated. I think she'd be really good for this next project. Then change it into the first person. Practice it in the third person as if you're talking about a friend or a colleague or one of your team members, and then bring it back to yourself so that you can talk about yourself and what you're capable of quite naturally, as if you were talking about the weather, right? It's going to be rainy on Thursday, and it'll be this temperature. I am really good at this. I have been able to accomplish this in the past. This is one of my strengths. I think I'm the person for this. Third, on a weekly basis, in a document that you save, list any wins or accomplishments you had that week and share it with whomever you report into. Let them know you started tracking your progress, and not just billable hours, right? And thought they'd like a copy, right? This is another way where we can keep the people we report into informed about what we're up to, what we're doing, what we're accomplishing, so that we don't fall off the radar or, something gets overlooked. Or because what can happen is if something happened 6 months ago, they might have forgotten. Right? They're dealing with what happened this week, last week, what's coming up the next week. So when they're thinking of you, they may not remember all of those things that you did 6 months ago that actually made life easier for them today. And then what you do is you roll it up each month, and then you roll it up each quarter, and at year end or review time, and you read through it as well so that you can appreciate, wow, I've done a lot. I've accomplished a lot. That gives you some confidence. But we have to record it, otherwise we forget it, because our mind has a negativity bias. We focus on what we did wrong and what we haven't done yet, as opposed to what we did right and what we have accomplished. I don't know about you, but I can fall into the trap of if I have 10 things on my to-do list and I accomplish 7, at the end of the day, I can get bummed out because I didn't get to those 3 things. Never mind that I accomplished 7 other things. It's the 3 that are left behind that really bum me out. If that resonates for you, put that in the chat box. I'll be interested how many others have that tendency, and we can drive ourselves crazy with it. So this is an assignment that can help you overcome that mentality, boost your confidence a little bit. And then the fourth one is share at least one of your goals with 5 people in your network over the next month. You want people to think of you when opportunities arise, right? We have to stay top of mind with people. And the great thing is sometimes, people can help us in the moment with a goal that we're working on when we tell them about it. And sometimes it's later, that they suddenly become aware of an opportunity and you come to mind because you told them about your goal. That's why with my clients, as soon as they set their goals and they know what they want to accomplish, I'm like, okay, you need to start talking to as many people as will listen about your goal, because that's how we get it done. That's how we start recruiting people to our cause without actively recruiting. Okay, any questions on getting over the thought or the feeling that you are bragging when you talk about yourself, your accomplishments, your goals, or what you need and want? I'm going to pause here. I'm going to take a sip of my tea in case anyone has a question. Okay, so I'm going to move on. And if you have any questions, put them in at any time. Katie's monitoring, so she'll let me know if I missed anything. Now, if you want your projects and initiatives to be successful, you're going to have to ask for more help. The larger the project or initiative, the more help you will need. The stumbling block that will get in your way in this regard is, if I ask for support, they'll think I'm incapable or incompetent, right? If I reach out and say, I can't handle all of this, I need some help, they'll think I'm incapable or incompetent, or they picked the wrong person for the job. If that resonates for you, go ahead and put it in the comments. I'd love to see if this one has come up for you, because this has been, let's see, yes, this has been a big one I've been hearing about lately. And definitely when Katie asked me about doing a webinar and the theme of the conference was Speak Up, I was like, oh boy, this is a good one. Overachievers get tripped up on this all the time. You may recognize this in yourself. You think you have to be able to figure it out and do it on your own, or it means you weren't qualified for the job in the first place, and that is not true. Most new assignments require some adjustment and experimentation, right? And it requires a lot of assistance. Also, when you are taking on bigger initiatives, it's expected that you will lead a team. Right? Like, you may have a team, but you're taking on bigger projects. You get promoted and all of a sudden you have a team for the first time, or your team gets bigger. It's expected that you would get more support, more help. This looks like delegating pieces of, the project or your responsibilities, and holding your team members, and they can be your official team, or they can be people you have recruited to help you. It means delegating pieces of the project and holding your team members accountable to their part. Use support as a sounding board, a resource, and an accountability check-in. As you take on higher levels of leadership and more responsibility, you lead more and do less. So you need to think about that. Like, when you're an individual contributor, you're doing a lot of work. You're moving a lot of widgets. There's a lot that you're producing. But when you go to higher levels of leadership and take on more responsibility, bigger projects, bigger initiatives, that sort of thing, you are actually, how do I say this? Like, your job is to do less, because you need to keep your eye on the entire project. And if you are, rolling up your sleeves and on the front line work with everybody else, you're going to miss things, and you're the one who is supposed to have the vision for the project. So, there are times when you may need to jump in and help, but I'm going to give a word of warning. Only jump in when there is a crisis or an emergency and you know for a fact no one else can handle it. So otherwise, hands off. Be the resource and the mentor. So, quick story of another one of my clients. She was promoted to be the HR director of a global company. She was promoted 2 years ago, and since her promotion, she'd been experiencing increased anxiety and health issues. She was unaware of how much she should have been delegating at that level. Like, she was in that mentality. She was totally an overachiever, was so honored and gratified that she was given the promotion, and had this notion of, like, I'm going to prove to them they chose the right person, right? But because she wasn't delegating as much, she couldn't keep up with all the work. It was becoming overwhelming, and she was working longer hours and weekends, and the whole thing. She had kids and family, all that stuff, and it was starting to become too much. And it was expressing itself through her health, her happiness, like her ability to manage stress. And this whole experience led her to believe she was underqualified for the job because she couldn't handle it all. And when I challenged her on that belief and explained what leadership looks like at different levels, she exclaimed, "Nobody has ever told me this." Right? Sometimes that happens. We just don't know. We're operating at the same level we were operating at as an individual contributor, not realizing like we need to let go of more. And once she realized it was okay to ask for support, I had her make a list of all the things that only she could do and a list of the things she had been doing that she could potentially delegate. Then she identified people who could take those tasks off her plate. She even identified some of the things that were in her area that really belonged to another department. And that can happen when companies experience a lot of growth and change over the years. Things end up in all different places. And every now and again, the organization has to take a step back and look at who is doing what and reorganize, the roles and responsibilities of the departments for greatest efficiency. Think of it like defragmenting your computer. You want to make sure like the company's operating in an efficient manner, but when there's sudden growth, and people are kind of coming in, coming out, that sort of thing, different things can end up in weird places. So every now and again, it's not a bad thing to take a step back and be like, should I be the one who owns this? Or would it be better for somebody else to do it? Maybe we could trade responsibilities or tasks. I really want to underscore, you cannot grow or advance in your career if you are too bogged down to take on new opportunities. Right? You don't want to be that person who, when they're thinking of promoting or they're thinking of like a really cool, sexy project that you would like to be a part of, the thought in their mind is like, oh, she has enough on her plate. Like she's really like barely staying above water. Like, because what people are going to think is like, we'll overwhelm her. We don't want her to be unhappy. We don't want to lose her. So let's not bother her with this. Right? That's not what you want. That's not how you want to be thought of. So asking for the support so that you are free and available and doing great is the goal here. So the assignment I'm going to give you is, should you choose to accept it, every day for the next month, I want you to ask for some sort of assistance. I don't care how big or small it is, or if it's in your personal or professional life. It does not matter. You must ask someone to do something for you that you haven't asked for before, right? You can't just say like, oh, I always ask my husband to pick up the milk on the way home from work, so that will be my one for this week. No, it's going to be something different, And here's a bonus one too. You cannot refuse help that's been offered, unless it's offered by someone who's kind of creepy. I always give my clients be out on that. Like if it's like someone you don't know or you don't trust, you can say no. But barring that, if somebody offers to help you or give you some assistance, accept it gracefully. Whether, they offer to get you a coffee if you want coffee, they offer to carry something for you, or if you're carpooling, if somebody offers to drive. So it could be like simple things. But when help is offered, say yes. Say, yes, that would be great. Thank you so much. Be gracious in the offering of help. And I know for some of you, this is going to be terribly hard. I am constantly guilty of carrying a lot of things and having a lot of bags, and someone will say, oh, can I help you with that? And I'm like, no, I got it. And I continue to struggle with what I'm carrying when I had an offer of help, when it would have made that person really happy to help me, and it would have made me happy to receive the help. Second one is, or if you, depending on whether you consider the first one or two, but the next one I'll give you is make a list, like I'm going to give you the assignment I gave my client. Make a list of the tasks you're responsible for and divide them into two categories. Tasks that only you can do, so you have to keep those, and tasks that can be done by someone else. Think of the people who want to grow and develop. too, and see if you can delegate and offload some of your work. Chances are they'll be eager to take something off your plate. I know when I was young in my career and I was hungry to be promoted for advancement, for projects, that sort of thing, if my boss came to me and said, hey, I've been doing this report, you know, I'd like to teach you this report and have you do it going forward, I was like, yes, yes. Because I wanted to show that I could take on more, I could do more. And the more things on her plate that I could do, the more I was proving I was capable of working at that level. Okay, questions. Alyssa, I am younger than a lot of the team members who report to me, and I find it challenging. It feels like they don't always want to listen. Any tips? I want to know some specifics on it, but let me say this. They probably may not want to listen initially until you've proven yourself a little bit, and that's okay. Like, you can manage that. This is the thing that typically works, and I've been in that situation where I was in my mid to late 20s, and I had people on my team who were in their mid 40s. And it was uncomfortable at first. But what helped me was building a relationship with them. You know, the more they trust you, the more they respect you. And I'm not saying going out for beers, you know, after work or anything like that, if that's, you know, not the company culture or that's not your style. It's about just getting to know them as human beings and hearing what they have to say too, because people will reciprocate as well. If you listen to them, if you honor what they're saying, they will typically come around and reflect the behavior back. But with this one, I would definitely want to, you know, get some examples, know a little bit more about what it is that you're offering to them that they don't seem to want to listen to, or if they just don't like your direction. So I would ask also, like, are you getting their buy-in? You know, when you're proposing something, are you introducing things in a safe, I'm going to use the word safe, non-threatening way before you are proposing this is the way we're doing it from here on out. I think sometimes if we propose changes that feel jarring to the people who are reporting to us, there will be some resistance. There may be more resistance if you are younger, they are older. Right, because they may question, like, does she know what she's doing? Has she seen this before? Yada, 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 yada. And I'll say this, and it was going to be one of the answers to a question that came in ahead of the webinar. The more we stay open to what's possible and that change can happen, and we don't give the circumstances too much weight, we can make changes that we didn't think were possible, right? I have definitely gone into situations where I know for a fact, and it was told to me afterwards, like I had a thought, like, I think they perceive me this way, and it was confirmed later down the road, yes, I did in fact perceive you that way, that I was this young girl coming in with all this energy and all this enthusiasm and all my ideas, and I wanted to make changes, right? You can feel the energy, you know, around, like, what I felt coming back at me. But the thing is I stayed optimistic. I stayed professional. I got to know the people in the room. I got to find out what motivated them, what they valued, you know, where they thought things should go, and I was able to work with that. I was able to present my ideas in a way that didn't threaten other people. In fact, just the opposite, invited them in to be a part of it. So the better you know your team, the better you'll be able to communicate to exactly what it is that they need from you. You know, even if ultimately what you have to say to them is, this is the change that needs to be made. You don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. This is the way we're going. You can at least support them through that. If that didn't answer your question, Alyssa, feel free to reach out at me. I'd be happy to chat with you more about this. And I was going to give this at the end, but my email address is Jodi, Jodi, at womentakingthelead.com. So for anybody, if you have questions after this webinar, feel free to email me. I am absolutely happy to chat with you about that. Okay. So any other questions on asking for support or delegating? Because I know this is a big one. I'm going to take a sip of my tea, pause here, give people some time. Okay, I've got another big one for all of you. You may have heard of this, so I'm going to ask you just straight away. Type yes in the comments if you have heard of the expression, your inner critic or your gremlin. This has become a very hot topic lately, and Tara Moore in her book Playing Big had a whole chapter on the inner critic, and I went over that on my podcast. I learned about the inner critic when I was going for my coaching certification, and at the time, this was 8-9 years ago, I was told this is one of the most powerful stumbling blocks that anyone can experience, and that, for any coach to have to work with and address and help their clients overcome, because it's so personal and it's so powerful. This is the third stumbling block that will get in your way and mess with your career, and it sounds like the following. For anyone who may not be familiar with the inner critic or your gremlin, it may sound like this. I don't know enough. I don't have enough experience. I don't have the right degrees or certifications. I didn't go to a good school or program, etc. So I want you to write in the comments the personalized message or messages you get from your inner critic, because they can all sound very similar, but sometimes they're a little unique because your inner critic knows you the best. They know your buttons. It knows exactly, where to get you to make you go, oh, I don't know if I can do this. So for me, my inner critic, one of the messages it sends me is, no one's going to listen to you anyway, so why bother? Right? That can come up for me. Or you're not as good as other people. You haven't researched this as much. You didn't get your PhD. Yeah, Alyssa, I don't have enough experience, right? What can I do? Because I don't have the experience, someone's going to call you out and call you a fraud, that sort of thing. That's what prohibited me from public speaking for a long time. I would just have visions of somebody in the crowd, challenging me and mocking me and, telling me I didn't know what I was talking about, which has never happened. Never happened. So let me explain the inner critic. This is a mechanism in your brain, and its only function is to keep you safe. That's its job, is to keep you safe. It goes on high alert whenever you're presented with a situation in which you may have to do something new, challenging, or scary. It does not want you to take any risks, and the strategy it uses to keep you from taking any risks is this self-sabotage. It tries to diminish any belief or confidence you have in yourself. Your inner critic would be happy if you would just stay at home every day, right? And not go after big things, not put yourself out there, not be visible, not be known, just stay here, and then nobody can attack you, right, or question you. But as we all know, without risk, there's no reward. We have to risk raising our hand. We have to risk speaking up and saying yes to an opportunity that will give us more visibility, because that's, where the rewards come from. That's where the recognition, the gratification, the fulfillment. I can't help people if I don't put myself out there and let it be known that I can help them, right? And demonstrate how I can help people and talk about who I serve. I have to be visible. I have to be vocal. Same goes for you. You will not be fulfilled in your career if you're not putting yourself out there and going after the next challenge, being more visible, opening yourself up to some criticism, right? It's not to say that we never get criticized, but we can change our perspective on criticism, right? Is it constructive? Is it helping us? I mean, don't get me wrong. Like sometimes initially when I get some constructive feedback, it's like, ooh, like I feel that. But then I get over it, right? And I realize it's so worth its weight in gold to have somebody, you know, help me diminish my blind spot a little bit, you know, make me more aware of how I'm doing, that sort of thing. So here's what you need to know about the inner critic. Everybody has an inner critic, and there's no getting rid of it. So the people out in the world who you admire the most, they have an inner critic. The people who get on your nerves the most, they have an inner critic, right? We all have it, and it all gets to all of us at times. The inner critic is logical, but it is not rational. It will look for evidence, hence the thoughts you have about not being good enough, right? It'll look for your weak spots, but its arguments are weak and they come from fear. We can be overcome by the inner critic in the moment, but if we stop and look at it a different way or really examine what it is trying to tell you, its argument falls apart pretty quickly. This part of your brain, this mechanism, developed when you were in elementary school. It hasn't matured, and it still relates to you like you are that age, like you are still young and inexperienced. It doesn't relate to you like the capable, educated, trained, and experienced person that you are today. And you have to remind your inner critic of this fact. Like, I am a grown woman. I have done X, Y, Z in my life. Of course I can do this. Yes, it's scary. Yes, it's unknown, but I've done this before. I've done new and scary and unknown things before, and I've come out the other side okay. And when you hear your inner critic starting to get louder and more frantic, congratulate yourself. It means you're about to go big or step out on a limb, and that's exciting. That's life. That's living. Right? So you can be proud of that. I got to a point where my inner critic was so loud, and it swore at me too. Like my inner critic has a foul mouth. I don't know about you guys, but it will swear at me and like who do you think you are? Right? When I'm really going big for something. And I laugh now. Like, I'm like, woo, there it is. Okay, I'm going for it. I know I'm living life right now because my inner critic just went wild. And it will quiet down. You don't have to worry. It's not like a constant voice you're going to hear in your head if you're going big. It's just something that's going to come up at first, but we can reassure it. Just being able to identify the thoughts that you're having as your inner critic messages, you have some power and mastery over it. It's just like emotions. You manage your inner critic and you use it like a warning system. You know, when I've identified my inner critic, I take some breaths. I analyze the arguments logically and rationally, and I use this time to identify if there's anything I haven't thought of yet that may increase my chances of success, right? So we know the inner critic comes alive when we're doing something new and big and scary. So I will, typically look for, okay, do I need to do more research? Is there anything I can prepare a little bit better? Who can I call? Who can I use as a mentor, a resource, a guide, to help increase my chances of being more successful, right? You can harness the tension that the inner critic creates to bring your A game to anything new or bigger than you've ever done before, right? Sometimes, we can change it from what is considered distress to eustress, and eustress is positive. It's when we get just a little amped up and excited about something, like if you're a competitive person, even if you're playing a board game, you kind of feel yourself get amped up, like I want to win, this is going to be fun. That's the same energy that the inner critic can bring if we manage it, right? If we don't let it stop us from moving forward. So I want to tell you another story of one of my clients whom I met, 3 years ago at this point. We met up for coffee before she hired me, and she was explaining her situation to me, and she was struggling with promoting her services, her consulting services, and asking for a fair price for her work. And as a result, she was struggling to keep her business profitable, right? That was part of the conversation. Like, I'm constantly, in this mode of like, my business isn't successful. I'm not making as much money as, I could be. And, my husband keeps telling me to charge more, blah, 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 blah. So when I challenged her on charging for the value that she was providing and also marketing herself with more confidence, she said to me, "Do you know who I was?" And this baffled me. And to give you some background, she's a recovering alcoholic who's been sober for like 15, 20 years. And at one point in her journey, she was homeless. And because of that, her inner critic would tell her she wasn't worth anything. And people would know by looking at her that she was nothing but an alcoholic who had lived on the streets. Right? And she had a phrase for it and a label for herself. And my response to her was, "Do you know how far you've come?
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
Do you realize the kind of strength it takes to get from where you were to where you are now? Do you realize how much you have to offer other people?" Like, it was a complete perspective shift. Like, she was caught up, and her inner critic was caught up in who she used to be, as if like nothing had changed. And so part of, my role as a coach is to help mirror back reality.
Okay,
and that was reality.
Sorry.
She was no longer that person.
Not to jump you on everything. Yes.
No, and the more she told me about her journey, the more evidence we had to show her
we went back and forth
how valuable and capable she was.
No, so
she now has a six-figure consulting business and is launching her own publication this month.
Reported on
once she stopped letting that story, that belief, sorry, Katie.
Obviously, I need to spend some time on this claim.
Is there any way to mute Katie? Can we mute manually? No.
I'm taking a look. Everybody, we're just getting a little bit of background noise, so if you could mute your microphones, that would really be appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. So I'll back up a little bit. The more she told me about her journey, the more evidence we had to show her inner critic how valuable and capable she was. And now, like, fast forward to today, it's been a few years since that conversation, and don't get me wrong, a lot of work has been done, but the strides she made, like month by month by month, the growth and the progress that was made, she now has a six-figure consulting business, and she's launching her own publication this month. Once she stopped letting that story, that belief, that inner critic message hold her back, it was like the world opened up for her. She wasn't afraid to have those conversations. She wasn't afraid to ask for the value of the work she was providing today because she had let go of who she was before so that her inner critic could no longer use that against her. And from my experience working with my clients in my own life and in my own life, it's not that opportunities are not out there, right? They're there. It's that we don't think the opportunity is for us, or we don't identify something as an opportunity because we've already made up our mind, like, we can't do it, we're not capable, it's not going to happen, we don't have enough experience or enough education or all of that. And let me tell you this, I have a friend who has her PhD and many certifications, and she still has this going on. Like, her expression, and it always makes me laugh, is new level, new devil, right? You get that next certification, you get that next degree. The inner critic doesn't care. It will look for something else to tell you you're still not good enough, you're still not good enough. So we have to identify the inner critic and realize what it is, what it's doing, and put it in its place, right? It is meant to just bring awareness to us that we are doing something scary, create some tension help us bring our A game to the forefront, but just like an emotion, acknowledge it and let it pass. Don't get stuck there. And, so when you hear your inner critic say, you can't do X, Y, Z for whatever reason it comes up with, I want you to respond, says who? Says who? And there are many examples out in the world of people who've done tremendous things who didn't have, degrees, certifications, they were young, they were old, right? Because when you're young, your inner critic will say you're too young to do this. And as we age, our inner critic shifts its gears and then will say you're too old to do this, right? It doesn't care what the facts are. It will throw something at you. Your job is to not accept it. So your assignment for this stumbling block is to write out your common inner critic statements. Like, you may know some off the bat and some you may not realize that it's an inner critic statement, but stay aware. And when, you hear it going off in your head, be like, oh, and write it down. Keep that list and start gathering evidence for why those statements are not true, right? Because these statements, if we don't challenge them, we hold them as true. We believe them, and they prohibit us from having the life that we want. And then earlier, I told you to make a list of your accomplishments, wins, strengths. I want you to review that list regularly. Keep it in a place where you can see it so you can remind yourself of that. Again, the inner critic can be advantageous to us, but we have to manage it. And we manage it by continuing to let it know who we are. So you have to know and embrace who you really are and what you're capable of. Okay, if you have any questions on the inner critic, how it shows up, how it holds you back, and any self-sabotaging messages, go ahead and put those in the comments now. Okay, so I just covered 3 stumbling blocks that might be holding you back from speaking up, and you have some assignments so that you can continue to apply what you've gained here in your career. I'm going to answer some of the questions that were sent in ahead of time, but if you have any other questions, please put them in the chat. And this first one, I'm going to actually copy and paste it because it's pretty long, and I'll put it in the chat. Start chatting. There we go. Okay. Oh, did it post? Okay. I'm hitting enter, but nothing is happening. It might be too long. Gail, where do you get your inspiration? I get it from a lot of different places. Are you talking about inspiration for the particular work that I do, or speaking up? I would say for speaking up, Brene Brown is fantastic. She is definitely inspiring in terms, she talks a lot about shame and guilt and wholehearted living and being vulnerable, right? Speaking up is definitely puts us in a place where we feel vulnerable, because if we speak up and give our perspective, then we're going to get attacked, right? And so we feel very vulnerable when that is happening. And so she is fantastic. She has many books out there. She has a TED Talk. I would say start with the TED Talk, and if that you feel for her and like what she's saying makes perfect sense, then go ahead and get the books. I've been recommending Right and Left lately, one of her first books, which is The Gifts of Imperfection, because for overachievers, one of our biggest things is perfectionism. Right? And that can completely get in our way. Like, I'm not going to say it unless all the ducks are in the row, or I'm not going to put this out there unless I know for sure nobody will have any problem with it. So you want, so embracing your imperfection and being able to just kind of roll with it. That was a great book for that. My own story, like, I was very shy growing up. And I think that's why I'm so passionate about this topic of being able to speak up, ask for what you want and need, say what needs to be said, and go after your goals, because I was so held back and just stressed out. I think I had some social anxiety. It was not diagnosed, but, my shyness is like a level of social anxiety. Do not confuse it with introversion. I am an extrovert and I was shy. I may have been perceived as an introvert because in gatherings or around people, I didn't speak up that much. It wasn't because I was introverted. Introversion has to do with a preference. It's about how introversion, extroversion is about how your energy gets restored and how you prefer to have your energy restored. And introverts tend to restore energy quietly and alone, and extroverts get energy from being around people and talking and that sort of thing. So just because somebody is not speaking does not mean that they are an introvert. They could be shy. And so reading books like Don't Sweat the Small Stuff and It's All Small Stuff, The Four Agreements, being introduced to Brene Brown were just life-changing for me. So those were fantastic. And so the question I had received that I was trying to post but couldn't post in the comments, I think because it's too big, it says, advice for government employees in their job search when switching agencies and how best to navigate the multi-pronged job search. This is more tactical than I typically deal with, but because I am resourceful and I delegate out, I actually reached out to a woman in my network who works in government. She actually works in Washington, D.C., and I had heard her talk many a time about bureaucracy, jobs, changing jobs, and that sort of thing. So she gave me this answer. She recommended going to usajobs.gov to look for vacancies that are posted, and the site allows you to set up custom searches for vacancies and announcements by location, series, job title, keywords, all that. And then she said you can set up multiple different searches and receive email notifications daily, weekly as designated, which is great. Her second tip was to talk to people in either the position or agency or both that they are thinking of moving into. She says often moving around in the government, especially learning about upcoming vacancies, happens through networking and letting people know what you're looking for and then having them remember you when the vacancy was posted. You know what's so perfect? I didn't even she didn't even know I was going to talk about that today, and this was the answer that came back. Let your goals be known. Start talking to people so that when the opportunities arrive, they will think of you, right? All of that stuff happens. So, for the person who asked that question, I hope that was helpful for you. And if you need any more information, please reach out to me. Again, I am jodi@womentakingthelead.com. I could get more information for you or put you in contact with my friend. Another question was, how do you go about finding a mentor when you are well into your career and would like to improve your skill set, efficiency, and communication with your clients? This is a great question. And one thing I'm going to challenge is, the concept of mentor and mentoring really got hot in the last 10 or 15 years. And I think, what happened was we started to form this hardened notion that mentoring happens in a prearranged formal relationship, right? And that can happen sometimes within corporate. For people of potential, the company will actually assign them a mentor, but that's not very organic and doesn't always work very well, because you don't want to be mentored by anybody. You want to be mentored by somebody who has the skill set, they have something that you admire, either a disposition, a mindset, characteristics, skills, that sort of thing that you admire. And you don't have to only have one mentor. I have mentors in various areas of my life. Some of them know they are my mentor because I've told them, or they've offered, I can mentor you in this area. Some of them don't know I think of them as mentors, but when I have a question in that particular area, I will go to them. You know, and there's ways of building up these relationships. Like, it can happen very organically. Like, I remember one time I was in a board meeting and somebody handled a situation so beautifully. And my thought was, wow, I would not have thought of that, or I wouldn't have done that. Like, so immediately this person became someone to me that I was like, she knows something I don't know, right? And so after the meeting, I approached her. I complimented her on how she handled that situation, you know, away from everybody else, so we couldn't be overheard, and asked her, like, where did you learn that? Like, where, you know, like, yeah, where did you get this inspiration, this idea? And she shared it with me. And then we made plans to have a coffee date, right? And so what I would recommend is look out in the world for the people who have that X factor, that thing that you are looking to develop in yourself, and see if you can build a relationship with them. And I'll say this, some of my best mentors I've never met because I've read their books, right? A book can be your mentor. A book won't hold you accountable, but it will give you some information, right? It can't talk back to you or anything like that, but you can take the book and talk about the subject matter with somebody else, right? So we have to think outside of the box. Like, if you don't have a formal mentor, it doesn't mean, you know, that that's a stumbling block to your career, because you can go about it in untraditional ways, or what we think of as traditional versus traditional when it comes to mentorship. And again, if I have not answered that question, please reach out to me and I will answer the question you're asking. This next question, how does unconscious bias influence the current environment? If you ask this question and you are on the call, let me know. I would like to clarify some things in your question, because the question's very broad, right? And I would like to clarify, you know, specifically what you mean by the current environment. Your current environment, political current environment, corporate current environment. I'd want to know what's the current environment you're experiencing to address this. But in a broad stroke, I would say unconscious bias influences first impressions, but that doesn't mean you can't change somebody's mind, and vice versa. You know, I would caution not to use other people as an excuse as to why you can't move forward in your career. If you identify that there are going to be no opportunities for advancement or, you know, appreciation or acknowledgement, then it's up to you to change your situation. Either commit to change the environment that you're in, or get out. And again, because I'm not exactly clear where this question was going, I may not be answering this in the direction you were looking for. So if you're looking for something more specific, reach out to me. I would be happy to address your question. But I actually was just in a training last week where they talked about this. We all have unconscious bias. Like, in the first 10 seconds, we've started to make assumptions about people based on what they look like, how they're dressed, how they comport themselves. We will make assumptions about their profession, their education, where they live, how they grew up, that sort of thing. We can't help it. It's human being. Our brain is like constantly trying to make sense of the environment, so it does these things. What I would say is, like, just stay flexible, stay open. You know, I talk a lot with my clients about be willing to be wrong. Like, it's great to be wrong, because you expand your awareness, you expand your mind, and you gain more experience. It's okay, you know, to have something like that happen. It's an opportunity for growth. Okay, we are at the hour. So unless anyone has any other questions, I don't want to hold you. You can stay if you want, but I would ask one more thing before you go. In the comments, please let me know, what was your biggest takeaway from all of this information and how you plan to use it. So again, I'm going to take a sip of my tea.
And Jodi, I just want to say a big thank you for joining us today and for spending an hour sharing some really, really awesome tips that I think all of us could use. And for anybody who is going to be watching this on the recording, right down below the video, we're going to have a little blurb about Jodi and her contact information and her website. So if you do have any questions but you weren't able to ask them live, please feel free to reach out to her. I know she would be very, very happy to answer any questions.
I love hearing from people. If I could do that all day, like I would. Awesome, Gail, creating the list with the 2 sections. Delegate, delegate, delegate. Awesome. And accepting help. Yeah, thank you for being here. I appreciate it.